Your life today, the reality you are currently inhabiting, is merely a projection. It is an apparently solid, tangible reflection of what your mind has created over the years. Everything that exists in a person's life, whether it is wonderful or tragic, existed first within their mind. You need to understand this fundamental mechanic. Our mind functions exactly like a cinema projector. The film that is running inside this machine, right here behind your eyes, is the exact same film that will be projected onto the screen of the world outside. There are no errors in the projection. The machine doesn't make mistakes. If there is chaos on the screen, it is because there is chaos on the film strip. If there is lack on the screen, it is because the script written on the film is a script of scarcity. Before anything happens out there, it has already happened in here. Most people spend their entire lives running up to the movie screen, trying to scream at the characters, trying to physically move the shadows on the wall, hoping to change the plot. But you cannot change the movie by fighting the screen. You have to go back to the projector. You have to change the reel. The reality you see is obedient. It has no choice but to obey the instructions given by your frequency. It is a mirror, not a master. And yet, so many of us live as slaves to the reflection, forgetting that we are the ones standing in front of the glass. We look at our bank accounts, our relationships, our daily struggles, and we think, this is just how it is. No, that is just how you were when you set that frequency in motion. Today, we are going to stop fighting the screen. We are going to learn how to master the projector. Because when you alter the frequency at the source, reality doesn't just change, it obeys. The other day, a very old friend of mine was telling me about a phone call he had just finished with his brother. Now, they talk almost every day. They are close. But his brother is someone who struggles immensely to make any headway in life. He is stuck. In his brother's mind, etched into the very film strip we just talked about, are every kind of limiting belief about money you can possibly imagine. And the tragedy is that this man is incredibly creative. He is extremely intelligent. He possesses a potential that very few people actually have. But due to a series of traumas suffered throughout his life, he has developed a thick protective layer against prosperity. To him, money is something inherently negative. It is malevolent. In his worldview, marketing only exists to scam people. Selling is synonymous with cheating. He has these beliefs rooted so deep in his psyche that they form the foundation of his identity. They are so strong that in this last phone call, he actually snapped at my friend. He said he didn't want to hear any more advice. He said that prosperity wasn't for him, that honestly, it wasn't even what he wanted. He claimed that financial success simply wasn't a priority in his life. And you know what? That is fine. It is perfectly okay if accumulating wealth isn't your number one priority. We all have different values. However, we have to look closer. We have to investigate, because prospering isn't just about hoarding cash. To prosper means to grow. It means to develop, to master new skills, to share your unique knowledge with other human beings. It means generating value that moves the economy, creating jobs, having the resources to help those in need. Prospering is literally a blessing. It is the expansion of life. But here is why I am telling you this story. Why does it matter? It matters because in the same breath that he claims he doesn't want to prosper, he complains. He constantly laments that he doesn't have the funds to do the things he loves. He complains he can't travel. He worries about having children because he can't afford them. He is frustrated that he lives in an uncomfortable place, that he can't help his aging parents, that he can't support his family the way he wants to. So, the truth reveals itself. It is not everything is fine. It is not a preference. He hasn't chosen a life of asceticism. He has chosen a life of repression. He created this belief system, this idea that money is evil, as an internal defense mechanism. It is a rationalization. It is a story he tells himself to soothe the pain of feeling incapable. Often these blocks stem from a deep wound in self-worth. Prosperity issues are almost always self-esteem issues in disguise. There is a massive lesion on a person's self-image. And usually this wound comes from two places. Either the person doesn't feel worthy of having good things, that deep, nagging sensation of being a fraud, or they don't feel capable of learning, growing, and doing what is required to achieve them. So they build a wall. They call it morality or preference, but it is actually fear. And that fear is the frequency they are broadcasting to the world every single second. Make no mistake, a lack of self-esteem is, quite literally, one of the worst frequencies a human being can vibrate in. And you have to understand, everything is frequency. Everything is vibration. You are going to attract every person, every situation, and every outcome in your life based entirely on your vibrational level. It is mechanical. It is exactly like tuning into a radio station. The question you have to ask yourself is, what station are you broadcasting? You cannot expect to hear classical music if your dial is tuned to static. You cannot expect a life of abundance if your internal transmitter is set to unworthy. But what is this frequency? It sounds abstract, doesn't it? Let's break it down. The frequency of every human being is essentially a compound of 4 internal pillars. I call this the BECA framework: beliefs, emotions, communication, actions. These 4 elements act as the coordinates for your reality. First, your beliefs. This is the bedrock. If you believe the world is hostile or that you are incapable, that is the signal you send out. Second, your emotions. These are the chemical reactions to your beliefs. If you believe you are unworthy, you will feel shame or fear. Third, your communication. This is how you speak to others, but more importantly, how you speak to yourself. Is your internal dialogue abusive? Is it defeated? And finally, your actions or your behavior. This is the physical manifestation of the previous 3. In this framework, one thing pulls the next. It is a chain reaction. If you do not do the work on your beliefs, if you do not build a strong mind, you will be tossed around by the chaotic winds of your emotions. Consequently, you will communicate in a way that is reactive, unbalanced, or passionate in the wrong ways. And inevitably, this will freeze your ability to take action. You become a procrastinator. You will not be able to put anything into practice, or you might start building something only to quit halfway through the moment the first difficulty arises. Or perhaps you won't act at all. You will spend your entire life planning and planning, waiting for the perfect moment to begin without ever getting your hands dirty. Or, in the worst-case scenario, you will resign yourself to stagnation. You will accept a small life. You will tell yourself the story that you didn't want it anyway, just like the man in the story I told you earlier. If your BECA, your beliefs, emotions, communication, and actions, is tilted toward the negative, your frequency is low. And if your frequency is low, your results are guaranteed to be negative. You cannot bypass this system. You cannot have prosperous relationships or financial abundance if you are operating on a frequency of trauma, emotional imbalance, and inaction. One follows the other. The reality obeys the signal. The first thing that is crucial to understand is that reality is an emanation of the mind. And I want to be very clear. This is not just my idea. This isn't some modern pop psychology invention. There was a philosopher who lived over 1,800 years ago named Plotinus. He was the founder of Neoplatonism, a school of thought that profoundly influenced Western philosophy and even laid the groundwork for the depth psychology of Carl Jung centuries later. Plotinus taught that all of reality emanates from a single, unique source, which he simply called the One. Think of it this way. Imagine a natural spring of water at the very peak of a mountain. From that single source, the water flows down. It divides into rivers. It trickles into creeks. It settles into lakes. The water changes shape. It changes temperature. It changes speed and velocity. But fundamentally, it remains the same water. It continues to come from the same source. For Plotinus, we are like that water. We are emanations of a unique creative consciousness. Your individual mind, it is simply a drop of that infinite fountain. Now, why is this ancient philosophical history lesson important for someone who just wants to change their life? Why is this knowledge critical for someone who wants to alter their reality? Because if you are an extension of a creative source, it means that you too are a creator. This power isn't something you need to go out and conquer. It isn't a trophy you need to win or something you need to prove you are worthy of receiving. It is your nature. It is what you are. You are built of the same substance as the source that creates worlds. The question isn't, can I create? The question is, am I functioning in alignment with this nature, or am I fighting against it? Plotinus argued that the fundamental problem of the human being isn't that they are disconnected from the source. That would actually be impossible. A wave cannot be disconnected from the ocean and still exist. The problem is that the human being has forgotten they are connected. And this amnesia, this partial disconnection from our true nature, is exactly what generates our low frequency. This forgetting is the root of the scarcity mindset. It is what makes a person vibrate in fear, in limitation, in smallness, because when you forget that you are part of something infinite, you begin to believe that you are small. You begin to believe you are isolated. You start to believe that resources are finite and that you have to fight to survive. You forget the ocean and you become terrified that your little drop will dry up. But you are not the drop. You are the water. And once you remember that, everything changes. Now pay close attention to this next part, because this is where the mechanics of manifestation actually happen. Plotinus also defended the idea that material reality, everything you see, touch, and experience physically, is the final layer of manifestation. It is the densest point of the emanation. It is the end of the line, not the beginning. Before something exists in the physical world, it existed first as a thought, as an intention, as a frequency. It started in the One, filtered through the universal mind, moved through the soul, and only then solidified into matter. This means that a philosopher from 1,800 years ago was already telling you exactly what I told you at the start of this video. Before it happens out there, it must happen in here. But Plotinus wasn't selling a get-rich-quick scheme. He was describing the architecture of the universe, and he used a powerful metaphor that I want you to visualize. Think of your mind as a mirror. The natural function of a mirror is to reflect light perfectly. When the mirror is clean, it takes the light of the source and reflects it into the world as a sharp, clear, powerful image. But what happens if that mirror is covered in dust? What if it is caked in mud, smeared with dirt, or cracked? The light still hits it. The source doesn't stop emanating. but the reflection comes out distorted. It comes out dim. It comes out chaotic. Your limiting beliefs are the dust on the mirror. Your unresolved traumas are the mud. The conditioning you received from society that tells you you aren't good enough, those are the cracks. The internal work, the real work of changing your life, consists merely of cleaning the mirror. This is a critical distinction. Most people think self-improvement is about adding things. I need to add confidence. I need to add skills. I need to add a new personality. No. Plotinus called this process epistrophe. It means the return to the source, the return to your true nature. The path to recovering your creative power isn't about adding anything external. It is about removing. It is about stripping away the layers of illusion, the conditioning, the false beliefs that make you forget who you really are. When you reprogram a limiting belief, you aren't forcing something new into your brain. You are removing a lie that was blocking your connection. You are wiping away a smudge of dirt. When you balance your emotions, you aren't creating an artificial state of happiness. You are clearing the channel so your natural energy can flow through without obstruction. It is a work of removal, not construction. And when the mirror is finally clean, you have to ask yourself, what happens then? The reality you project becomes sharp. It becomes powerful, because there is no longer any interference between who you really are and what you are creating. You are no longer creating based on who they told you to be. You are no longer creating from your wounds. You are creating from your essence. Your true self is revealed, and reality has no choice but to reflect that clarity back to you. If we could summarize the essence of this philosophy in a single word, that word would be flow. More than 2,500 years ago, a Chinese sage named Lao Tzu wrote one of the most powerful texts in human history, the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu taught that there is an invisible force that permeates the entire universe. He called this force the Tao. It can be translated as the way. The Tao is the natural flow of life. It is the intelligence that makes the sun rise without effort, that makes a seed grow into a tree without anxiety, that makes your heart beat without you having to command it. The Tao is the order behind the apparent chaos. And what was Lao Tzu's greatest teaching? Do not fight against the Tao. Do not resist. He used the analogy of water, just like Plotinus, just like we are using today. He observed that water is the softest, most yielding element in nature, and yet, over time, it carves through the hardest rock. The flexible conquers the rigid. The soft overcomes the hard. Water wins because it does not resist. It flows. Most people, however, live in a state of constant resistance. And what is resistance? It is the attempt to hold on. It is the refusal to let go. We have a name for this refusal: attachment. Attachment is the fear that this is all there is. It is living as if the universe were a limited place, as if there were a finite amount of money, of love, of opportunities, of happiness. The attached person acts as if, should they let go of what they currently have, they will never receive anything ever again. They cling. And here is the paradox, the rule of the game that you cannot cheat. If you cling, you lose. If the river stops flowing, if it tries to hoard the water, it becomes a swamp. It becomes stagnant. It rots. Attachment is resistance to flow, and resistance is what blocks the frequency of creation. When you are terrified of losing, you are signaling to the universe that you do not trust the flow. You are signaling scarcity. And because reality obeys your frequency, scarcity is exactly what you get. Think about the person who is stingy. I am not just talking about money, although that is the most obvious example. I am talking about people who are stingy with their emotions, with their affection, with their ideas. They hold back. They are terrified that if they give too much, they will be left with nothing. They grip their resources with a closed fist. But look at a closed fist. Can a closed fist receive anything? No. It is physically impossible to place anything new into a hand that is clenched tight. When you live with this scarcity mindset, terrified to spend money, terrified to love deeply because you might get hurt, terrified to leave a job that makes you miserable because you fear you won't find another, you are standing in front of the infinite abundance of the universe with your fists clenched. You are telling the universe, I do not trust you. I do not trust that there is more. I need to hold on to this little bit of security because I don't believe anything better is coming. And the universe says, okay, and it gives you exactly what you believe, nothing new. This is why the river stays full. It stays full because it lets the water go. It allows the water to pass through. It trusts the source on the mountain to keep sending more. Circulation is life. Stagnation is death. When you hoard, you stop the circulation. You block the energy. You cut yourself off from the Tao, from the source, from the flow of creation. You have to understand that generosity, whether it is financial generosity, emotional vulnerability, or creative sharing, is not just a nice thing to do. It is a strategic alignment with the mechanics of reality. It is an act of faith that keeps the channel open. To get more, you must be willing to let go of what you are clutching so tightly. You have to open your hand, because only an open hand can receive. So, how do you actually do this? How do you move from understanding this intellectually to living it practically? First, you have to identify the resistance. You have to be honest with yourself. Where are you clenching your fists? In what area of your life are you operating out of a fear of loss? Is it your career, your relationship, your bank account? Identify where the fear is. That is where the blockage is. Second, you have to investigate the belief behind the fear. Why are you afraid to let go? What is the story you are telling yourself? If I spend this money, I'll be broke forever. If I open my heart, I'll be destroyed. These are the smudges on the mirror. These are the lies you need to wipe away. And third, you have to practice the act of release. You have to practice trusting the flow. This doesn't happen overnight. It is a daily practice. It requires consistency. It requires a commitment to cleaning the mirror every single day. However, I know that for many, the biological stress signal in the brain makes this daily cleaning feel almost impossible. The noise of survival mode drowns out the signal of abundance. If you feel like you are doing the work but your internal frequency is still stuck, there is a way to bypass that resistance physically. It is a strange, ancient 9-word prayer, a simple 10-second ritual recently analyzed by neuroscientists that activates a dormant region of the brain, often called the billionaire loophole. Think of it as a master key that silences the stress so you can finally align with the frequency of wealth, sometimes starting in as little as 24 hours. I strongly recommend you investigate this for yourself. Point your phone's camera at the QR code on the screen right now, or simply click the link I have pinned in the top comment below to watch the video explanation. It might just be the missing piece that keeps your mirror clean. You don't need to force reality to change. You don't need to scream at the screen. You need to become the person who naturally attracts the reality you want. You need to become the clear channel. When you do this, When you clean the mirror, when you release the resistance, when you trust the flow, you create a frequency so strong, so pure, and so aligned with the nature of the universe that reality has no choice. It obeys. Start cleaning the mirror today. Start opening your hands. Trust the source and watch how the projection changes. I'm Eleanor. Thank you for watching.